Hello, Shalom, and welcome to Jerusalem. Welcome to Scout Israel in the Davidka Square. And we're going to be discussing one of the dumbest weapons of all time, the Davidka, and the most powerful weapons of all time, lies. So, join me on this wonderful tour of Jerusalem and Davidka Square. So, Davidka Square, as the name sounds, is named after the Davidka, which is a kind of weapon, the weapon behind me. This was used in the 1948 Arab-Israeli conflict, also known as the War of Independence for Israelis. It is a kind of mortar, if you could call it that. So to understand what this is, you have to understand how mortars work. Mortars, very, very basically, you have a tube and you have a self-propelled grenade, a self-propelled bomb, which sticks in the tube and it runs up the tube and out and hits whatever you want to hit it at. It has like a propulsion in the bottom through of the projectile that sits in the tube. That's what propels it, some kind of explosion in the bottom, or sometimes a compressed air pellet which propels the projectile forward. It goes up the tube and out. This one, the projectile barely sits inside the tube. In fact, the Davidka we're looking at here is kind of 2/3 of a Davidka. That alone, that is the mortar. It's a fairly small part. Just to give you an example, that's barely half a meter. This bit here, this is just the beginning. It's not the entire Davidka projectile. It's only part of the Davidka projectile. Here's an example of the full Davidka projectile. End bit here, that's the actual projectile. It's missing the wonderful tail fin, which had no real effect. And it, as you can see, the actual end bit here is considerably smaller than the projectile it would have shot. This causes a number of problems. Problem number one. It has zero accuracy because it doesn't have a tube directing it. In fact, one account I heard said it was more likely that the Davidka would go backwards instead of forwards. So the people firing it would literally start the projectile systems, and if it could, that's what it could be called, and run and hide, because it could go backwards. Also, it's so heavy that it doesn't actually go that fast or that far. So I would claim you might be better off just picking up the bloody thing and hitting the enemy with it. Other problems with the Davidka. It's supposed to contain 40 kilograms of explosive. There's barely the force to carry that across the battlefield. So you'd be an idiot if you filled the entire end, I suppose, wherever the explosives go, of the thing with explosive. Keep in mind that in the 1948 war, the Israeli side only got a shipment of weapons fairly late, got their shipments of weapons fairly late on, because the whole area was under embargo by the British until they left at the start of the war, so they didn't have time to really get weapons, so to speak. They were smuggled in and made and cobbled together. So you're not going to spend 40 kilos of explosive on this thing, which isn't particularly accurate. If you imagine what 40 kilograms is like, if you're not good with kilograms and pounds and things, that's 40 standard bags of sugar. That's really heavy for especially something that's not that aerodynamic. So you're not going to put 40 kilograms of explosive in it. By all accounts, they put like bits of rock and stuff. Now, what effect did the Davidka have? Well, physically, it went bang, the end, and bits of shrapnel flew around. psychologically, the claim is it struck fear into the minds of the Palestinian Irregulars, who they were mainly fighting against, and that's according to a Palestinian writer called Walid Khalidi. I would like to claim once you're in the middle of one of these battles, you're already petrified. You don't need a bloody Davidka to make you petrified. You're already, that's it, you're in the middle of the battle for Abu Kabir. Well, how much more petrified do you want to be? It was somewhat effective. It was used in the following battles, used in the Battle of Abu Kabir, the Battle for Jaffa in 1948. It was apparently used in Haifa. It was used most famously in Sfat, or Safed, as it's called in Arabic, where the claim is they fired it, and then before they fired it, they claimed they had atomic weapons. And because everybody heard a big bang and what looked like might be a mushroom cloud, everybody ran away from Sfat. This is pure fiction. This is just gibberish. The Palestinian Arabs in Sfat didn't run away because of this. They ran away from a concerted effort from, by all accounts. We can argue about this, and I'll probably make a video arguing about the various moral issues with the 1948 War of Independence. But the concerted effort to make them leave, it wasn't this whole thing about a atomic bomb. And what's more, like, yes, you could possibly be an ignorant person, but you wouldn't believe that the bang coming from that was the same as an atomic bomb. By all accounts, the sound an atomic bomb made was like a door slamming in hell. Yes, it was probably a bit explosion, not door slamming in hell, not that bad. So what's going on here? One simple word: propaganda. And propaganda, it normally is supposed to have negative connotations, gibberish. Every single battle and every single victor in history has used propaganda, has used lies to win. If you don't think that, then you're not a particularly, you don't know your history. Everybody has. And lies involves having a myth, having a hero story. And even as these battles were being fought, there were people in the Zionist Central Command thinking, how can we spin this story? And that is the story of the Davidka. The Davidka was part of an idea of being David and Goliath. It is even in its name. It's named after a guy called David Leibovitz, but it's also named after King David and his fight against Goliath. And very much the attempt was to paint Israel as the David against the Goliath of the, 5 Arab armies that invaded Israel in 1948, which it didn't have to go far to do, but there's a part also that mythos. There were other similar weapons used. There was the Napoleonchik, which was like a small little cannon that looked like a Napoleonic cannon, and they used PIATs, which is a much more effective projectile weapon, using kind of bed spring-like things to propel the projectile instead of, which is much smaller than this and much more effective. They didn't have bazookas, so this was their attempt to say, look at us, we're doing well. So that's really the real use of these things. And there's a whole load of videos on YouTube on the dumbest weapons in history. Actually, you can have dumb weapons, but it's how you use your weapons. That's what we call tactics. So I would like to claim that the Davidka, terrible weapon, brilliant tactics. It was used as part of the general story of David and Goliath, and the general story and the attempt of the early Zionist state to gain money from abroad, from Jews living abroad, to pay for a better army, which certainly happened. And that's the Davidka. Davidka Square is a stop on the Jerusalem light rail. It's also this wonderful little square in the heart of Jerusalem with the Davidka standing here. So thank you for joining me at the Davidka Square. remember to hit like, share, subscribe, and if you really want to give a bit more support to the channel, you can go to my Patreon site and my Ko-Fi site. That's patreon.com/ScoutIsrael, ko-fi.com/ScoutIsrael, and help us out like that. And remember to go follow the next video. I'm going to be doing a full tour of the old city. Probably click the little thingy that's going to arrive in a second here once I've filmed that one. Thank you very much.